French sensationalism. The main thinkers are Etienne Bonnet de Condillac, Charles Bonnet, Julien Offray de Lemaitre, Claude Adrien Helvetius, Pierre Cabanes, Manet de Biran, and Auguste Comte.
Etienne Bonnet de Condillac. The first major figure in the trend of sensationalism is Etienne Bonnet de Condillac. He was born in Grenoble and was educated at the Jesuit seminary in Paris. He found his way into the literary and philosophy of Paris, and he steadily lost interest in his religious career. In his most famous work, Trait des Sensations, he offered an interpretation of psychology activity based on sensory experience. Major contributions. Condillac began by denying Descartes' notion that the mind is born with certain innate ideas. He proposed an analogy of statue. This states that human beings are with internal organization and mind is empty of any ideas. He said a second sense is developed, judgment is acquired because of this state and statue and now can be compared to input of two sensory modalities. Condillac gave the concept of will by stating that the capacity of self-reflection occurs as the result of alterations between memory and objects. In this concept of statue, he states that the single sense of smell and it is capable of realizing the difference between pleasure and pain. Condillac introduced the concept of materialism to modern psychological thought. Charles Bonnet. Charles Bonnet, naturalist and philosophical writer, was born in Geneva, the most prominent French-speaking city of Switzerland. He belonged to a French family driven into the religion by religious persecution in the 16th century. Life and work. He studied reproduction in tree lice and reported that the female can produce fertile offspring without the male of the species and suggested that sex may not be only for production but also for enriching offspring with the diverse characteristics of two parents. He was one of the first scientists of the 18th century to use the term evolution, although he meant by it the chain of life from simple atoms to human beings. His investigation of plants led him to conclude that plants are endowed with sensation, discrimination, and even judgment, which Bonnet viewed as evidence of intelligence. Introduction of nervous system. Bonnet extended Condillac's view by examining the physiological mechanisms of sensory processes. To continue with Condillac's statue analogy, Bonnet gave the statue a nervous system to accomplish sensation. He argued that tracing of nervous fibers would explain not only sensory processes but also the psychological functions of attention, memory, and recognition. He was one of the first scholars to mention specific nerve energies wherein a function is accommodated by a certain system of neurological fibers.
Julien Offray de Lemaitre. Julien Offray de Lemaitre was a French physician and philosopher and one of the earliest of French materialists of Enlightenment. He is best known for his work L'Homme Machine, which means machine man. Lemaitre was born at Saint Malo in Brittany on November 23rd of 1707, and he was the son of a prosperous textile merchant. After receiving his doctorate in medicine, he studied anatomy in Leiden, the Netherlands, and published several works that emphasized the role of brain in human pathology. He eventually became a surgeon in the French army, but he continued his studies and writings. Lemaitre's materialism held that matter has an evident element which has motion. He based his conclusion on the sensory feelings found in the lowest animals and plants. This observation led him to propose a type of evolutionary hierarchy in the motion of matter. Thus, in higher animals, the motion of matter allows the heart to beat and brain to think. He believed that mental processes were caused by the body. He expressed these thoughts in his most important work, Man a Machine. There he also expressed his belief that humans work like a machine. This theory can be considered to build off the works of Descartes and his approach to the human body working as a machine. Lemaitre believed that human body and mind worked like a machine. Although he held further Descartes' view of mechanization in explaining human bodily behavior, he argued against Descartes' dualistic view on the mind. His opinions were so strong that he stated that Descartes was actually a materialist in regards to in mind. Development of psychology. He disagreed with the Christian beliefs and emphasized the importance of going after sensual pleasure, a hedonistic approach to human behavior. He established an ethic that judged the actions of people as determined by their desire for sensual gratification. Lemaitre argued against the need for a separate discipline of psychology.
Claude Adrien Helvetius. Claude Adrien Helvetius was the son of the Queen's physician, born in Paris and was educated by Jesuits. As a tax collector, he became rich, married a beautiful countess, and later retired to the countryside to live a contented life as a gentleman philosopher. His works attracted Europe's finest thinkers, and in 1758 he published his best work, De Esprit, on intelligence. Contributions. He believed in sensationalism and also concentrated on the environmental determinants of the individual. He agreed to Lemaitre on the basis of desire in pleasure seeking, but related the same motivational principles to environmental influences. According to him, all people are born with equal capacities, but the environment acts differently on individuals, which strengthens attention and widens perception in some and not in the others. He defined intelligence as this difference in capacity of the people to deal with the environment. He didn't oppose the French sensationalists. He emphasized on how the environment reserves a place for psychology. He argued for better educational benefits and more open social structures. Pere Cabanis. Cabanis was a final figure in the French sensationalist tradition. He modified the extreme vice of Corneille, Bonnet, and Lemaitre like Helvetius did. He was a distinguished physician, and he met the great thinkers who gathered in the literary silence of Paris. Major contributions. He related mental operations with sensory inputs and thereby leading to the discarding of minds as an idea. He proposed the concept of central ego of brain which integrates and synthesizes the sensory input. His concept of central ego indirectly preserves the concept of mind even if it's described in terms of brain. He recognized the levels of consciousness which includes unconscious and semi-conscious processes. Sensations do not exist in pure form. Instead, they are part of entire system mediated by central ego or self. He brought in the presence of brain physiology into the discipline of psychology. He embedded mental processes with materialism of nervous system.
Many Dibiran. Many Dibiran, the greatest psychologist, according to William James, initially contributed to the French tradition of sensationalism. But later he transcended the frameworks of this tradition and found different aspects of intellectual evolution. Besides being a psychologist, he was a soldier of the Garde des Corps of Louis XVI, and his works went through four distinct phases of intellectual evolution. Phase 1. During this stage, Behrend was in support of a group of psychologists called ideologists, which was founded by Cabanis to promote and propagate Condillac's teachings. That is, he was contributing effectively to the sensationalist philosophy. Phase 2. He broke with the ideologists, and in his next work, Essay on the Decomposition of Thought, he agreed that human understanding is the sum of associations of brain caused by the stimulation of nerve fibers from motion in the environment. He argued against the fiber psychology of the ideologists that relegated the human activity to the mechanistic atomism of sensory elements. He focused on the will as an intentional entity that defines the essential character of self. That is, will defines the spiritual force that explains life itself. Phase 3. His idea of psychology took its final form in his next work, Essay on the Fundamentals of Psychology. He concluded that psychology is the science of immediate data of consciousness. Like Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Brian said, I will, therefore I am. He recognized that psychology's province is to study the intentionality of self of consciousness. He suggested the objective observation of self through individual experience. Phase 4. In this stage, he infused religious aspirations into his entire concept of psychology. Through this, he aimed at explaining the individual diversity, merits and demerits. His interest focused on the diverse aspects of human nature that result in creative, unpredictable activities fully expressive of the individual person. Defined psychology as a comprehensive discipline that aimed at explaining individual diversity. Changing views of psychology ranging from physiological to mystical interpretations. Auguste Comte. Isidore Marie Auguste Francois Xavier Comte was a French philosopher who founded the discipline of praxeology and the belief of positivism. He was born in 1798 in Montpellier, France, and contributed as a philosopher and writer throughout his life. Major contributions. The discipline of praxeology dealt with the study of human action based on the notion that humans engage in purposeful behavior. Comte's positivism was revived in an updated form during the early part of the 20th century and succeeded in establishing behaviorism as a dominant model in contemporary psychology. Moreover, he asserted that the society undergoes three phases in its quest for the truth. These were the theological stage, metaphysical stage, and scientific stage. In the theological stage, a man's position in the society and the society's restraints upon man were referenced to God. Man blindly believed in whatever he was taught by his ancestors and in a supernatural power. The metaphysical stage was referred to the stage of investigation because people started reasoning and questioning. This stage was the beginning of a world that questioned authority and religion. In the scientific stage, people could find resolutions to the social difficulties and act on them despite the proclamations of human rights or prophecy of the will of God. This stage relies on science, rational thought, and empirical laws. Interestingly, he omitted psychology and placed the study of individual under physiology, thereby agreeing with the sensory physiological view of psychology advocated by Condillac and Lemaitre. Another popular view by Comte was altruism. According to him, individuals have a moral obligation to renounce self-interest and live for others. The presentation was prepared by Adarsh KV, AMISHI Sharma, MUNNA RS, SHARANYA N, and YUKTA MEHDIRATTA. Thank you.